Good morning, Rav.
Good morning, Chris. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us again.
What a legend Carol was. Indoor air quality leads in really well.
Perfect. See, we time it perfectly, Rav. So I'll throw it over to you. And
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Chris. And happy Building Designers Day. It's been a great set of presentations. I really loved PC Thomas's one last night, as well as all the other designers that are really passionate to hear. Let me introduce myself, Rav De Silva. I've spoken at BDA conferences about condensation and mold and things like that. And we did the passive house courses just to have a look. And there's others that have spoken about passive house. Today, it's really about modeling for building designers. You know, people like Les Dixon, who helped me get introduced to the Building Designers Association, shows me what designers are going through, trying to understand, interpret what the consultants are saying and putting into buildings, and then trying to talk to clients who want the gold tap or the gold bath, but sometimes forget about what happens with the building fabric. So today it's about, you know, what sort of model do you want to build up for your own practice, and probably where we can help to try and give you air tightness, give you that well-insulated building to meet the savings that PC Thomas was talking about. And I won't go in a lot into the flame zone passive house that we helped design. That was a really, really good project because Joe at Blue Eco was really committed to try and get the best house that he could for that functional area. So I'd like to talk to you about the opportunities that are out there. You know, what is the opportunity that we're trying to get? Well, if you look at what PC Thomas was talking about, it's about having heating and then try not to put too much heat that's going to cost you into that building. So when we put a heater on, what we're trying to do is get the wall temperature as close to the radiant temperature as we can. So we don't want to have cold feet. You know, I'm living in a house that was built before I came into the insulation market, and I built kilns, and also I ran kilns, and I understood where air leakage was causing me greater problems than the amount of heat that I was bringing in, because I was bringing in cold spots, and those cold spots, I was trying to heat for the cold spots, and that was never going to work. So what we had to do was now start focusing on air tightness. But once you get air tightness issues, then you have what Carol's going to be making a lot of money out of, which is poor air quality, because you're going to have formaldehyde and you're going to have different gases being given off by the fabrics that you're using. So we really have to start looking at what we're using once we start making buildings more insulated and more airtight. So once we get down to those 3 and 4 air changes an hour, you know, what's it going to feel like? Is it going to feel like that plastic bag? Do we have to put HRVs in? Or can we maybe fix that by not having the cold spots in houses? If you look at where we're going to, you know, this is my house. That bright orange that you see at the bottom of the screen there, you know, these bits here. Let me go.
Rav, we can't see your screen.
Sorry, mate. Let me. How's that, Chris?
Perfect.
Cool. So if you look at this bright spot, it's really where the heat is leaking out. And if you look at what insulation we had to go back and try and fix, if you look at this spot here, where there's some blue foam, what I was getting was a lot of mold in that area where there was a chair going behind it. It was a northeast facing wall, so it should have gotten enough sun, but it was getting a cold spot. So one of the things we're trying to do is try and eliminate those cold spots, and try and go back to basics and say, okay, this is what we want to do. We want to be able to get the best bang for your buck by using the right insulation, using the right products on the inside and the outside. So if we look at where we've got to be, places like mine where we forget to put the insulation where the flooring is. That's just the first thing you could try and look at. Now, has anybody ever detailed that? Well, not that I've seen, and I think those sort of things are the type of focuses that I'd like people to understand. If you can get rid of the cold spots, that's where that's essentially what a thermal bridge is. That's where the cold is coming in and you're trying to get heat into that spot. And you're potentially creating a condensation risk, because once it cools down, all that moisture that's hitting the window is also hitting the outside fall sarking and dripping down as water. So you're creating a job for somebody to get rid of the mold when you don't need to. Plenty of cold spots in houses, and we've got a thermal camera that we bought for somewhere around about $400, and it was well worth it, because you can go through, not with the new house, but maybe with the old house if you're a designer, and do an audit, a thermal audit, and say, hey, how do you feel about this room? Are you getting damp, mold? Are you getting this? Maybe we have to fix that before you build your next house. So, deal with the problems they have and the things they don't like with their current house, and stop it from happening again. What's the best solution? I like the passive house ideas. This is a drawing taken from Passive House New Zealand through their construction details. And a thing I like about this is the discussions about control layers. Now, if we do another presentation to the BDAA, this could be an hour and a half type topic, but it's important to understand what we're talking about with regards to control layers. I like putting my air control on the inside and the vapor control, and the water control is something as simple as vapor permeable sarking. That's a class 4 sarking. If you don't know what a class 4 sarking is, please inbox me or give us a call, and we can go through that. And I'm happy to review designs. I do ask, that you refer the builder to us for insulation and sarking, but we've got to pay the bills, just as you guys have got to pay the bills in getting the right designs. The business model that we're looking at is something for you guys to look at. There's always somebody that's going to do it cheaper than you, right? And there's always going to be somebody that's going to be giving you a Rolls-Royce type design for somebody who's got a Kia budget, where they just want to build it as we go. The thing about Passive House is that it's got an ability to deliver within plus or minus 1 degree between the floor and the wall. And that wall there is next to a window, for example. And what we see is really, really good performance. Now, this is a granny flat. It's essentially a reverse masonry wall. We did it in Hammondville, and we went back and did an air test on it without really trying to get a really good result. We found a leak that if once it got sealed up, would take it from 14 air changes down to about 9 air changes. Now, if we just look at what PC Thomas said, if you really want to save energy, you're down around 3 to 5. But this is a granny flat, and they didn't have to use the heating during winter, because their interpretation of how much clothes they had to wear, they were happy to wear a jumper inside the house. Whereas with my place, I don't normally wear a jacket inside. We would prefer to have, t-shirts and shorts, but that means our heating bill goes up. So when I can't afford the heating, we all go out and wear jumpers or wrap blankets around us. Is that normal? Well, it depends on which, what your preference is. I went for a walk this morning. There's some people wearing shorts and a t-shirt at 9 degrees, whereas other people were wearing fairly thick jumpers. Everybody's different, and you've got to understand that from your client's perspective. And that's the importance of being a building designer. And then your model is the type of questions that you ask and the type of building that you deliver for your clients. So what's out there for you? What's the simple things that you could do? We do commercial properties, where this is an example at Edmondson Park, where we put PIR boards on the underside of a concrete slab to stop the thermal bridging through the floor. There was an example in an office building where there was a receptionist in a big area, and her feet were freezing because she was just above the car park. And the outside air in that car park was about 4 degrees and 5 degrees, and never reached over 10 degrees during the day because there was no sun that came into that area. So it's an understanding of what people are going to go through. Now, that junction there between the roof and the ceiling and the wall is critical. If you want to try and find a way to get that junction and do it easily, then it's easy. But you can also try and do it the cheap way and try and use something that hasn't been used before, and then go to something that's going to cost you 3 times more in labor and still have a leak. You can start looking at products that give you the airspace within a roof space for your vapor permeable sarking if you've got a flat pan section. But if you don't use it and that roof sheet touches the membrane, we don't know whether that temperature is going to get so hot that it's going to melt the membrane, or whether there's going to be enough space for that water to leak through. They're all little things that need to be looked at. Here's a commercial boarding house that we worked on, and they really did the right thing. They wanted to keep the energy bills low because the people that they were dealing with didn't have the money to pay for the extra heating. So whatever heat was generated needed to be saved. And what we did was we suggested to put a rigid board underneath that section, and then put a spacing for the services, and then the plasterboard went on. And the idea here was that it gave you a thermal break. And I remember speaking to Les when he was designing my house. He said, look, the closer I put that ceiling, if we go with raftered ceilings, you'll burn the top of your head. In summer, it's not a nice place to be here because the sun's always on this facade. So we came up with a system where we put the PIR board underneath the ceiling frame. And that seems to have worked pretty well. We had some feedback from a builder in Armidale, and he said that was the warmest that the occupants had felt in a long, long time. All they did was take a metal shed and use our build up our materials. He loved it that much. He used it as his standard designs. Now that's a guy that been building for 40 odd years, and he changed his ways. So right now I'm looking at what models you guys want to take on. And if you want to join in with some of the systems that we've worked on for the last 16 years, I'm sure your clients will be happy and it'll lead to more work. And the biggest impediment here is, what are you used to? Here is an example of the best solution from something like the Passive House Society, Passive House Institute. You've got your roof levels, you've got your spacer mat, you've got your breather membranes, you've got your insulation, then you've got your vapor barrier, then you've got your space. Great. How many rocket scientists know how to go from something like this, which is what they're used to, and where there's water forming underneath that false arcing and water forming in here, gathering up, and then if you're unlucky, water leaking down into these corners on the southern side. We've seen that often, and people think it's a roof leak, and then once they replace a roof and then it leaks again, they paint that section and then sell the house because it's just not a nice place to be. What we're coming up with is practical designs, and we'd like to work with designers to think about what they do. Something like a vapor permeable membrane is not as expensive as something like fall blanket. We don't like fall blanket going into more airtight houses because the condensation is a risk. The ICANN's handbook mentions it 96 times as a warning. And with what the building commissioner has said, it's designers who are going to be regulated. They're the ones that need to understand what's going on. Now, if you don't know what's going on and you don't want to specify products and you just want to say, leave it to the manufacturer's instructions, you're still liable, because manufacturers can say whatever they like, but they're not in control of what the design is. They don't know how long we as a reseller understand what people are using and say, look, if you want to take the risk, this is what you're going to do. Just make sure in your drawings you put, don't use fallback blanket. But if you use fallback blanket, somebody's going to say, oh, what about the acoustics? Well, we did measure it. We went to Day Design and compared two townhouses side by side. And what he said was it was not an incremental, but it was a indiscernible change. So, don't let your fear stand in the way of good design. Somebody's going to say something to you and you need to do the research. And we'd like to help you with the research, but it's also got to be independent. And this is where the BDAA will come in as well with presentations like this and what you hear from other speakers. Yeah. What I think one of the things that I saw here was what Carol had mentioned. I'll run this video slightly. It's from FEMA.
August 29th, 2005. Millions of gallons of water overtook the city of New Orleans, forcing hundreds of thousands to flee for their lives, only to be victimized again by Rita.
We don't have no running water.
800,000 homes were damaged or destroyed, and people were living on the streets. Reacting to this critical need, FEMA ordered more than 140,000 trailers to be built at a cost of some $2.7 billion. And that's where the problem began. Contractors were hired to build the trailers quickly. Shortcuts were taken, and building materials used may have contained toxic levels of formaldehyde. Formaldehyde is often found in building materials, and it's said to be a carcinogen, which means it can cause cancer.
Initially, if the levels are very high, you would, have some eye, nose, throat irritation.
Many living in the trailers began to complain of those symptoms, and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention agreed. In spot checking trailers, hundreds were found to have higher than normal levels of formaldehyde. In 2009, FEMA began evicting people living in the trailers, and those units were left empty. FEMA decided not to sell the trailers to the public in an attempt to avoid additional lawsuits. Instead, to recoup some of its investment, the government sold the trailers at auctions. The General Services Administration says 9 of the 13 lots shown here were sold. The GSA made buyers sign this form. It says the trailers may have formaldehyde and are not to be used for housing. Stickers were also placed on the trailers with that warning, but stickers fall off. The majority of the FEMA trailers have been sold to RV dealers around the country and in turn to consumers who may not be aware of the warning. Several hundred remain sitting in a lot in Opelousas.
When I first saw those trailers there, I was like, oh my God, no. I mean, they are so gross looking. They sinking in the ground.
At some point, these trailers too may be sold. For potential buyers, the warning is clear. Live in them at your own risk. Under the law, these trailers are to be used for storage and recreational use only. Mary Muller, Local 33 News.
So does that sound familiar to anybody? Like, that word asbestos? There are people selling stuff knowing that it's wrong. Okay. I'm really proud because we just got the Declare label and that's really about indoor air quality and the amount of toxins that are released. Somebody's going to say to you, yeah, well, what about when it burns? Well, mate, when it burns, you're not sitting inside the house smelling the gas, you're running out. You've got half an hour to get out and hopefully the fire brigade will be there in 15 minutes. Okay, so those sort of arguments need to be understood because there is easily quite a lot of fear, but you're going to be living in that house and paying for the energy. Let's try and fix the energy issue and the cold spots. That's what the whole energy efficiency thing is all about. So if there's an opportunity for us to help you out with a design, please give us a call. My name's Rav De Silva. I'm from Integra Building Products. If you need to contact us, please do. Chris, if there's any questions, happy to take them now.
Rav, I think you may have shocked quite a few people. So it's quite amazing, really, when we have these natural disasters and so forth, at the lack of, I guess, policing of the fabrication, construction materials used and so forth, just to get these things out. People don't start to look at standards and make sure that these things are still, I guess, healthy, but obviously due to the pressure of having to get them out in a rushed manner. But yeah, it is amazing that you would be stuck in that little box, breathing in all of that plastics that I guess it's a brand new trailer that hasn't even, you know, breathed, hasn't got any of the, I guess, the toxins out of it. So
no, and it goes back to what Carol was talking about. You can start using, you know, plants and stuff to pull it out, but like she said, you've got to think about it before you start designing, and you've got to understand, you know, how much formaldehyde's in there. If you use plywood and brace, you know, plywood bracing, for example, and it's got a lot of glue in it, that glue's probably got quite a lot of formaldehyde in it to preserve it. So guess what? That air, during summer, it's coming in, it's being sucked in. Hopefully in winter it's being pushed out, but your indoor air quality is going to depend on that. Now, you know, your furnishings like carpets and fabrics have got quite a lot of restrictions on there for the air quality standards that are running.
Yeah. So now when we talked about the sarking and so forth, I think that the most, and insulation, I think the most important thing is actually install properly. A lot of people go and put it on in their designs and comes up to a build, and either they don't put it in, substitute for a cheaper material because they're making more profit on it. But I can tell you,
Chris, it's crazy, isn't it? Because it's a difference between 50 cents a square meter to $2 a square meter, and in the roof, it's a lot cheaper than what it is to put blanket in. It's just a habit, you know. The guy thinks he's saving $200. The builder thinks he's saving $200 from going away from what's specified. It's crazy.
Yeah, and look, I've even seen people putting the sarking upside down, so they've gone and, oh my God. I actually had to stop a guy the other day on a job. I just said to him, have you ever put like sarking on before? He goes, yeah, all the time. And I said, do you put it on like this? He goes, oh, it doesn't really matter. I just put it, whether I start at the top or the bottom, I don't really give a shit. I just put it on. And I'm like, oh my God. And I said, so when we get the water coming down the sheet, it's meant to lap over to allow the water to continue, not to get ingress into the property. I said, that's going to cause moisture issues inside. He goes, it doesn't matter, mate. When it's clad, how's water going to get in? I said, well, why? If you don't think anything's going to get in, what do you think sarking everything's there for? Like, just to me, it's the lack of education. I think that the trades need to be educated more during their tertiary education.
The investment, it's not just them. I mean, look at the oversight. There's no design engineer. I mean, in the good old days, you know, you used to have an architect walking on site and having a look, or you know, the clerk of works, that sort of thing. And I think that's what David's message is. And I do, you know, the building commissioner. I don't know him personally. I like what he stands for. I think having a cop on the beat. You know, I walked around. How many people put flashing on the top of windows, or if they put sarking at all?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and I think what's lacking in the industry is, you know, when we talk about having the, you know, the critical stage inspections, insulation's not one of them. And I think that's one of the most critical that you need to have. So you know, you've got your wet areas, you've got your timber framing, but they only need to look at 10% of wet areas before a tile's applied. So the whole system's flawed. But to not include insulation is crazy, because no one's actually confirming whether insulation's been put in the walls or not.
And look, later on, it's, you know, you just pull the plasterboard out afterwards, but you know, the sarking you can't solve once you've got water damage or water running in. And the hope that in Australia, you know, driest continent in the world, it won't rain for 10 years on that wall, so they will never get caught. But for the owner to try and take that window out and put flashing back, how much is that going to cost? Well, yeah, maybe they'll call me back in to fix it.
I've got a question for you here. What is the best practice for insulating a conditioned space below a concrete roof to avoid condensation?
First step in the specification, make sure that they don't put fallback blanket on the middle roof. That's the first step. So use a class 4 vapor permeable membrane or a vapor barrier. The second step is if you're putting something like between R4 and 7 at the ceiling line, I would also put a vapor barrier in Sydney. So somewhere, once you start to get a big air tightness, R values of 4 to 7 of the bat with a vapor barrier at the ceiling line is critical to avoid condensation. And that's 16 years of condensation analysis.
A couple of people are wanting to know how to get in contact with you. So we might put your email address up. What's the best email to get you at?
Look,
you want to type it in the chat?
Yeah, I'll do that now. I'm hoping that this is sales at.
Tell me you don't know your own email address.
Mate, I've only just started Integra Building Products because it's the next generation. I'm hoping that that's gone out there. Sales at integrabp.com.au. Yep, or my LinkedIn.
And we've just put up your LinkedIn profile as well. We'll just do
good is that?
Click of a finger, Rav.
Good, go Sarah Jane. And if they want to give me a call, 0435 753547. I like to have a chat, but like you guys, time is money, and sometimes I'm able just to send you a one pager just to say, hey, this is what we can do. And thank you to all the designers that have been supporting me and the ABSA members as well. We get a lot of ABSA members asking us for help to speak to the builders, and our service is, hopefully within 45 minutes we've solved your problem. If you need a delivery the next day, we take credit cards. If you're on an account, we'll help you with accounts. We've helped to design some of the more notable buildings out there. Timber buildings at Barangaroo, Granny Flats in Hammerville, Edmondson Park Shopping Centre. The thing that makes me feel greatest in helping building designers is that house that Les did for Alex. She's a nurse. She hasn't got a lot of spare money. She built this house in Peakhurst, and it was wonderful. She said to us, she hasn't felt that warm. She does the heater hardly goes on, and as she retires, it's not going to be a big drain on her funds later on. So that's the proudest moment, and I love those type of jobs, and building designers deliver those type of good feel good moments for us.
Oh, we love feel good moments, Rav. So thanks once again, Rav. Rav's LinkedIn details are there in the chat. Thanks once again. Look forward to hearing from you soon.
Good luck to everybody.
International Building Designer Day to you and your family, and to all those around the world, happy International Building Designer Day to you too.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks,
See you
Rav.
in the lockdown.